Most people walk into a crowd like background furniture. Same posture, same nervous smile, same dead small talk. They dress almost right. They stand almost straight. They say almost something. By the time they leave, nobody can recall a single detail except that they were nice. Being forgettable is not an accident. It's the natural result of moving through rooms without a strategy. Machiavelli understood that the crowd never sees your soul, it only sees your surface. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand because everybody can see you, but few come in touch with you. Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few really know what you are." That's the first rule of never being forgotten. The room does not care who you are inside. The room cares what you look like you are. You can be kind, brilliant, deep, and still vanish if your appearance and behavior don't tell a story strong enough to register in memory. So you stop crying about being misunderstood and you start designing what people are allowed to see. You do not let crowds decide your role. The average person walks into a room and waits for other people's reactions to tell them who to be. If people ignore them, they shrink. If people seem amused, they become a clown. If someone powerful pays attention, they become a pet. That is how you become forgettable. You let the environment draft your character. Machiavelli would call that a prince without a strategy, already ruled, not ruling. You decide your script before you cross the doorframe. You pick one word you want the room to associate with you. Composed, sharp, mysterious, precise, electric, not 10 words. 1. Then everything you do in the first 10 minutes quietly supports that word. If you choose composed, you don't rush, you don't flail, you don't let your eyes dart like a hunted animal. If you choose sharp, your clothes are clean and deliberate. Your questions cut through small talk. Your phone isn't in your hand like a pacifier. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince ought, above all things, to always try in every action to develop the reputation of being a great and remarkable man." He doesn't say, be great, he says develop the reputation. Reputation is what remains in people's minds when you walk away. In a crowd, you are not building your personality, you are building your reputation. Every small choice becomes a detail in the story they tell about you later. Your entrance is the first photograph their brain takes. Most people enter like they're sneaking into their own life. They slip through the door too fast, scan the room with panic, and head straight for the safest corner or nearest screen. The crowd receives one message: invisible, uncertain, low stakes. You do something different. You step in, pause for half a second, let your eyes sweep once calmly across the space. Then you move with intention to where you chose to be, not where your anxiety throws you. That tiny pause and deliberate first step plant you as someone who belongs. Your speed is a memory. Fast movements read as nervous or needy. Slow, heavy movements read as arrogant or drunk. You aim for a medium, steady cadence, like someone who has somewhere to be but no one they must chase. You don't dart from group to group as if you're hunting approval. You let people come into your orbit. When you change places, you do it in clean lines, from one cluster to another, from the bar to the table, not zigzagging like a lost signal. The brain remembers people whose movement looks intentional. Your stance is your anchor. In a crowd, most people stand like they're apologizing, knees locked, shoulders caved, weight dumped onto one leg, toes pointing any direction but forward. You choose a stance that makes you look like you could stay there all night without suffering. Feet about shoulder width apart. Weight balanced, not collapsing on one hip. Shoulders down and relaxed instead of hunched toward your ears. Spine long but not stiff. Hands visible, lightly together at your front, loosely by your sides. Maybe one hand holding a glass at waist level, not glued to your chest like a shield. The room reads that stance instantly. You don't look like security. You don't look like a lost intern. You look like a reference point. The human brain tags reference points. Even if they never speak to you, people think afterward, There was that one person who looked really calm near the center. That already put you above 80% of the crowd. Your face carries more signal than your clothes. Forget smile constantly. Constant smiling turns you into background noise. You use expressions like punctuation, not wallpaper. When you're at rest, your face is neutral but slightly open, jaw relaxed, mouth not pinched, eyes not narrowed in suspicion or widened in panic. When you talk with someone, you let real expression flare briefly, an amused half smile, a raised brow of interest, a flash of real laughter that dies down quickly. The contrast between calm baseline and short bursts of emotion makes you look alive but not chaotic. People remember faces that didn't demand attention every second but lit up at specific moments. You eliminate fidgeting, anything repetitive and mindless, tapping, bouncing, scratching, lip biting, tells the room you're not fully in control of yourself. That makes you blend into the anxious majority. Before you go in, you decide where your hands will live. Maybe one hand in your pocket with thumb hooked out, the other free. Maybe both hands loosely around a glass you're not chugging. Maybe one hand resting on the back of a chair beside you. When you catch yourself fidgeting, you calmly reset. Look like a person who is used to being seen. Being memorable in a crowd isn't about volume, it's about signal clarity. Loud people get noticed, but they rarely get respected. You want the kind of presence where someone across the room can glance once and think, "Who is that?" Not, "Why is that person so loud?" You earn that by holding your own space, not spilling into everyone else's. You don't lean into every circle. You don't shout over music to tell pointless stories. You speak when there's something to say, and the rest of the time your body says, "I'm comfortable here whether you engage with me or not." You choose one visible detail that sets you apart. Subtle, not costume. A particular ring. A clean, unusual watch. A sharply structured jacket. A single color that appears twice. In your shirt and your shoes. Or your nails and your accessory. Nothing clownish. Just one repeat pattern that makes you easy to recall. Later, when they try to describe you, they won't say, "I don't know, just some guy." They'll say, "The one with the dark jacket and silver ring who looked really composed." That's enough to stay in the story. Your listening makes you unforgettable more than your talking. Most people in a crowd are waiting to speak. They nod too fast, interrupt themselves, glance around while someone else is mid-sentence. You do the opposite. When someone speaks to you, your eyes stay on their face. Your body angles slightly toward them. Not too much, just enough to show you're present. You let them finish. Then you answer with one or two lines that show you actually heard what they said, not just the keywords. The experience of being truly listened to in a noisy room is rare. People don't forget the one who gave it to them. You avoid the behaviors that erase you. You don't keep checking your phone every 30 seconds. You don't cluster with only one person in the corner the entire night unless that is your deliberate choice. You don't attach yourself to a stronger personality like a shadow, laughing at everything they say. Shadows are forgettable by definition. You can stand beside powerful people, but your body must still read as independent. Your own stance, your own timing, your own way of scanning the room. The law is simple. In a crowd, you are not there to prove that you exist. You are there to leave an outline in other people's minds strong enough that they could describe you the next day. Calm entrance, deliberate stance, steady movement, controlled face, one memorable detail, real listening. None of that requires being the loudest or the most dramatic. It requires being the most deliberate. The crowd forgets noise. It remembers shape. You become the shape. Eyes are the first thing the room feels, even before it notices your clothes. A crowd can ignore your outfit, your words, even your status, but it rarely ignores a gaze that knows what it's doing. Most people's eyes confess everything. Insecurity, hunger for approval, boredom, resentment. That's why they blur into the background. Your eyes start to separate you from them the moment you stop letting them leak your need. Machiavelli saw how easily people get pulled by surfaces. The common people are always seduced by appearance and success. In a crowd, your eyes are one of the sharpest appearances you control. They tell a story about whether you are chasing the room or the room is orbiting you. If your gaze constantly searches for confirmation, you look like you're waiting to be chosen. If your gaze moves on its own terms, you look like someone who arrived already chosen. The first shift is simple. Your eyes stop scanning for where you fit and start observing what's actually there. When most people walk into a crowded place, their eyes flick for safety. Where are my friends? Where can I hide? Who looks scary? Who looks important? Every tiny dart broadcasts fear. Instead, you train yourself to take one calm sweep. You step in, pause for a heartbeat, let your eyes travel slowly across the space, faces, exits, main activity, and then you decide where you're going. Not because you're hunting validation, but because you're reading the environment like a strategist, not a beggar. You don't stare. Staring is needy in disguise. It's a demand. Notice me, respond to me, give me something back. Your gaze is contact, not cling. When you lock eyes with someone, you hold it just long enough to register, 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then you either nod slightly or let your eyes move on. No flinch, no panic break, no sudden floor check. Your eyes should leave a small, clean imprint. I saw you. I'm not chasing you. That tiny message is rare. People remember it. The second rule is where you rest your gaze when you're not talking. The average person stares at their phone, their glass, or some vague middle distance that screams awkward. You pick anchors that make you look engaged with the room, not trapped in it. When no one is directly addressing you, your eyes sit comfortably on the current speaker, the main activity, or the group you're in. If there's a stage, you glance at it. If there's a conversation, you watch faces, not the floor. Even when you're not talking, your eyes say, I am part of what's happening here, not, I hope nobody notices I don't know what to do. People feel how hungry a gaze is. A hungry gaze tracks every movement of someone you're attracted to, or every micro shift of someone you're intimidated by. It lingers too long, then snaps away guiltily. It checks their reaction after everything you say. That hunger makes you forgettable because it puts you in the category of everyone else who wants something. You don't suppress desire, you starve the visible hunger. If you're attracted, your eyes don't keep checking whether they saw you. You let 1 or 2 clean moments of eye contact land, then you give them space. If they're important, you don't keep watching to see how they react to others. You trust that if you matter, they'll notice you without you visually clinging to them. Your eyes should never look like they're asking the room a question. Am I okay? Do I belong? Do you like me? They should look like they're answering one. I see what's going on. I'm calm. You achieve this by softening the muscles around them. No constant squint as if everything is a threat. No wide-eyed panic like you're about to be exposed. Your default expression is what photographers call soft focus. Gaze relaxed, lids not lifted too high, the look of someone who is taking things in without rushing to judge. This makes you feel slower inside. It also makes you read as self-possessed. You decide who gets your full, locked-in attention and who doesn't. Not everyone earns the same level of gaze. When someone is speaking directly to you and you want them to feel your presence, you give them full eye contact with brief breaks. Look at their eyes while they speak. Glance away for a second when you think, then back. When someone is rambling to impress, you don't reward every word with laser focus. You stay polite, but your eyes occasionally scan the room, return to them, then move again. The message is subtle. I hear you, but I'm not orbiting you. People unconsciously register who you give the deepest attention to. That's how they learn your standards. You also protect your gaze from becoming a free commodity. In a crowd, some people constantly test others with loud jokes, weird comments, or minor disrespect, just to see who flinches and who laughs. Most bystanders immediately look at the tester, hungry to be part of the moment. You don't. When someone throws out bait that doesn't match your standards, your eyes do something small but lethal. They don't rush there. Maybe you finish your sip, keep your gaze on whoever was speaking, or briefly glance over with a neutral look, and then go back to your original focus. The punishment is that your attention is not easily hijacked. Machiavelli's lens on human nature fits here. Men are so absorbed in appearances that they often fail to see reality. In a crowd, the appearance that hooks people isn't only how you dress, it's where your eyes live. If your gaze is always pulled toward noise, drama, and status displays, you look like everyone else, absorbed by the same circus. If your gaze moves on your own terms, reality flips. You become one of the few people who appear to be in control of themselves. That's what the room remembers. How you shift your eyes between people is another detail that separates you from the blur. When you're in a group conversation, you don't glue your gaze to the loudest talker, you share it. While someone speaks, you occasionally glance at others in the circle, as if you're checking how they're receiving the story. This makes you feel like a quiet reference point, someone who's aware of the whole micro scene, not just the star of the moment. It's the body language of a person used to reading rooms, not auditioning inside them. When you enter a smaller cluster inside the crowd, you don't crash into the middle with your eyes demanding instant centrality. You approach, let your gaze take in who is talking, and listen for a few seconds before you speak. That initial listening, combined with steady eye contact, is magnetic. You're giving the group a gift most strangers don't: respect before performance. When you finally say something, people already feel seen by you, so they register your presence more strongly. Your eyes also regulate how much access people feel they have to you. If someone is draining, disrespectful, or constantly negative, you don't need a grand speech to distance yourself. You simply stop feeding them your full gaze. You answer briefly, look elsewhere more often, and let your interest cool in a visible but calm way. They will feel the difference between the warmth you give others and the cool, minimal attention you give them. Humans are addicted to eye contact. Losing it from someone steady is a quiet shock. On the other side, when someone earns your respect, you use your eyes to mark it. You look fully at them when they speak. You nod once when they make a strong point. You maintain contact when you express appreciation. Years later, people remember exact moments when someone really looked at them and made them feel real in a loud place. That memory attaches to your face. You don't weaponize your gaze with cruelty. You're not rolling your eyes, glaring, or scanning people like prey. That type of intensity is dramatic, but not powerful. It reads as insecurity and armor. Your version is controlled. You choose where to look, how long to hold, and when to release. The effect is that people feel you as composed and selective, not hostile. You stand out because you look like you're having an experience of the room that's deeper and calmer than the average person's, not because you're throwing daggers with your eyes. Silence plus gaze is one of your strongest combinations. When someone says something provocative, tests your boundaries, or makes a subtle dig, you don't rush to defend. You let a small silence sit, your eyes on theirs, expression neutral. That suspension forces them to hear their own words hanging in the air. Often they'll soften, backtrack, or add, "I'm just kidding." You may then respond with a simple line, "I heard you," and let the topic die. They will remember that moment way more than they'd remember a loud comeback. Not because you destroyed them, but because your eyes showed you weren't afraid of the discomfort they created. The law is simple. The room believes the story your eyes tell about you long before it hears your story about yourself. If your gaze is scattered, needy, or constantly pulled, you read as forgettable no matter how good your lines are. If your gaze is calm, selective, and deliberate, you read as significant even when you're quiet. You don't need exotic clothes or perfect features. You need eyes that move like they belong wherever they are, not eyes that beg to be allowed in. Posture is the silent geometry of power in a room. Before anyone hears your name, before they register your words, they feel the way you occupy space. Most people let the room bend them. They fold near whoever is loudest, lean toward whoever seems important, shrink toward the edges when they feel unsure. By the end of the night, their body has been pulled into a dozen shapes by other people's gravity. No one remembers a shape that never belonged to itself. Machiavelli understood how hard it is to step into a new role. He wrote, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." Changing your posture in crowds is exactly that, introducing a new order. Your old body language was built around fitting in and minimizing risk. Your new body language is built around being an anchor. The room will test it at first. Your own habits will test it even more. But once you hold it, people have to move around you instead of you always adjusting around them. Start with your vertical line. In a crowd, gravity pulls not only your weight, but your confidence downward. Slouched shoulders, folded chest, tilted head. These all tell the room, "I'm not sure I should be here." Overcorrected stiffness is just as forgettable. It looks like cosplay authority. The posture that makes people adjust around you is calm and aligned. Feet planted firmly, knees soft, pelvis neutral, spine long, shoulders relaxed and slightly back, neck tall, head level. You're not puffing yourself up. You're letting your skeleton do its job instead of curling around your anxieties. A body that looks like it belongs where it stands becomes a reference point in the scene. Where you plant yourself matters. Most people cling to walls, doorways, or corners because those spots feel safe. But corners make you scenery. If you want to be remembered, you stand where traffic naturally flows, near the center of the room's activity, not blocking it, but close enough that people have to register you as they move. 2 steps off the main path, not jammed into it. You give yourself enough space to move your arms without bumping people, enough distance that someone can comfortably join you. You become part of the architecture of the room instead of its background. Your angle tells people how to position themselves. If you stand fully parallel to the wall, you look like furniture. If you face one group completely, you trap yourself there. You use a slight angle, torso turned partly toward the main activity, partly open to the rest of the space. This invites people in from more than one direction. When someone approaches, you don't swivel your entire body in a rush. You turn just enough to include them. If they stay, your posture slowly opens. If they don't, your body returns to its original comfortable angle. You are never left hanging in an awkward orientation because your default stance is already balanced. Your center of gravity is non-negotiable. Constantly shifting your weight from one leg to the other looks restless. Leaning heavily into one hip looks bored or defensive. You want to look like you could stand there for a while without fatigue. That doesn't mean being rigid. It means letting small movements happen without breaking form. You occasionally adjust a foot, roll a shoulder, change how your hands rest, but the overall column stays stable. People unconsciously place themselves around the most stable objects in a room: chairs, tables, pillars, and the few humans who act like them. Leaning becomes a tool, not a habit. The average person leans forward when they feel needy and backward when they feel threatened. Both extremes giving away too much. You lean with intention. When you speak to someone one-on-one, you might incline your upper body a few degrees toward them to show engagement, but your feet stay grounded and your spine doesn't curl. When you're listening in a group, you don't crane your neck into the circle. You stand upright and let your gaze and subtle head turns do the work. The message is, I'm present, but I'm not throwing my whole body at you for approval. Hands finalize the impression, hands buried in pockets, arms locked over your chest, or fingers endlessly toying with objects all send a message of insecurity or closedness. The alternative isn't theatrical gesturing. It's visible, Relaxed hands in positions that look like you're ready to interact but don't need to. One hand loosely cradling a glass at waist level. Both hands light on the back of a chair, fingers gently linked in front of you. When you do gesture while speaking, your hands move in short, clean arcs near your center, not wide, frantic swings. This controlled economy makes your words feel heavier and your presence more grounded. Distance is posture in motion. In a crowd, people are always drifting, closing in, stepping back. Forgettable people let others set every distance, jumping forward when someone calls their name, lingering too close when a chat is over, hovering when they've been dismissed. You do something different. You choose your radiuses. You keep an easy arm's length as your default with most people. You let close friends step slightly inside that, and you gently correct anyone who tries to crowd you without earning it. Half a step back, diagonal repositioning, turning part of your body toward open space. You never yank yourself out of someone's orbit dramatically. You keep recentering until your nervous system can breathe again. Position inside small groups is another lever. When you're in a circle, you don't stand on the extreme edge where you're half in, half out. You also don't shove yourself into the middle. You take a position where everyone can see you without you blocking anyone else. Feet solid, shoulders square, chest open. You're not craning to catch every word. You're relaxed enough that if some details evaporate, you'll live. That relaxed confidence makes you easier to remember than the person doing too much to stay relevant. Machiavelli advised that anyone building something should assume people can work against it. Whoever desires to found a state and give it laws must start with assuming that all men are bad and ever ready to display their vicious nature whenever they may find occasion for it. Applied to posture, this doesn't mean paranoia. It means you build a stance that still works even when people are distracted, selfish, or slightly disrespectful. You assume they might cut in front of you, talk over you, ignore your presence, so you don't design a presence that collapses the moment someone fails to validate it. You stand in a way that keeps you visible and dignified, even when others are careless. That makes their behavior look worse, and your stability look sharper by contrast. Exits and entrances inside the crowd are also posture moments. When you move from one group to another, you don't slink away like you've been rejected. And you don't storm off like you're offended. You say a short, friendly line, "I'm gonna grab a drink. I'll catch you in a bit," with your body already slightly turned toward your next destination. Then you walk off at your usual pace. No rush, no drag. When you arrive at a new cluster, you don't interrupt from the outside. You let your posture show patience, standing close enough to be noticed, not so close you invade. When there's a natural break, a glance or a question, you step in fully. People remember the person who transitions smoothly more than the one who pops in and out chaotically. Your posture also sets an invisible boundary for what kind of behavior reaches you. If you stand crumpled, people unconsciously feel permission to talk down to you, stand over you, or brush past you. If you stand solid and relaxed, they instinctively give you a little more space. They may not know why they're circling around you instead of through you, why they're adjusting their volume when they speak to you, or why they straighten slightly in your presence. They just feel it. Posture is how you negotiate respect without words. Being unforgettable in a crowd doesn't require theatrical poses. It requires consistency. The same calm alignment when you're alone by the wall and when you're in the center of a group. The same grounded stance when a high-status person approaches and when a stranger makes small talk. The same deliberate transitions between spots instead of impulsive ones. Over time, people don't just remember what you wore or what you said. They remember how you stood. The law is simple. In a crowd, you either become part of the room's structure or part of its clutter. Structure is what people move around and remember. Clutter is what they bump into and forget. You choose structure, feet planted, spine aligned, angles deliberate, distances chosen, movements clean. You don't force anyone to treat you like a center. You hold yourself like one until the room quietly starts adjusting around you. In a crowd, most people lose themselves in noise. They talk too much, too fast, too high, or not at all. Their words spill everywhere and land nowhere. When the night is over, no one remembers a single sentence they said, only that they were there. If posture is the geometry of power, then your voice and your words are its signature. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You need to be the one whose sound feels like a decision, not a request. The first mistake forgettable people make is confusing performance with presence. They crank up their volume, overload conversations with stories, or force jokes into every gap. For a moment, they get attention. By the end, they've exhausted everyone, including themselves. The opposite mistake is shrinking their voice down to a whisper, apologizing with every syllable, and letting others speak over them until they disappear. Both extremes are reactions to the crowd. Your goal is different. A voice that stays the same regardless of how chaotic the room gets. Start with pace. Anxiety speeds you up. You rush through sentences as if you're afraid someone will walk away before you finish. That rush tells people your words don't believe in themselves. You slow down, not into a fake theatrical drag, but into a measured rhythm. You allow micro pauses between thoughts. When someone asks you something, you don't start talking before your brain has even formed an answer. You take a breath, let half a second pass, and then speak. That tiny delay feels like confidence. It tells listeners you're not scrambling for approval. You're selecting what's worth saying. Then pitch. A higher strained pitch in a noisy room sounds like a child trying to be heard among adults. A forced, artificially deep pitch sounds like someone auditioning. You settle into the natural lower half of your range, whatever that is. Relax your throat. Let the breath sit lower and speak from there. You're not trying to intimidate anyone. You're trying to sound like your words have weight. In a loud bar or event, people instinctively turn toward the voice that cuts through without shrieking. You become that voice by being grounded, not by shouting. Volume is a tool, not a plea. You don't compete with the music or the loudest person in the group. You project just enough so that people standing near you can hear clearly. If someone says, "What?" you don't instantly jump to shouting. You simply repeat a little more clearly, maybe lean in slightly, then return to your usual level. The impression you leave is of someone who is never desperate to dominate the soundscape, but refuses to be swallowed by it. Words themselves are filters. In crowds, people default to safe, forgettable scripts. What do you do? So, how do you know them? Yeah, same. Repeated in a loop. You don't need to reinvent language to stand out. You just need to ask and answer like you're awake. When someone asks what you do, you don't recite your job title like a label. You give a short, concrete answer. I make X easier for Y. Or, I work on Z so people don't have to worry about it. One or two sharp lines beat a paragraph of jargon. When you ask questions, you add half a twist. What do you do? Becomes, what do you actually enjoy about what you do? That slight depth makes conversations with you feel different. Different is remembered. Machiavelli understood the danger of surrounding yourself with people who only tell you what you want to hear. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. In a crowd, you reverse this. You become the person whose words aren't flattery by default. You don't overcompliment just to be liked. When you praise, it's specific and real. That point you made about X was sharp, or the way you handled that question was clean. Because you don't hand out empty flattery, your genuine approval carries more weight. People remember the one whose compliments felt earned, not mass-produced. You also remove verbal padding that makes you sound unsure. Words like just, kind of, sort of, maybe are useful sometimes, but most people drown in them. I just wanted to say hi becomes I wanted to say hi. I kind of work in marketing becomes I work in marketing. I'm maybe thinking about starting a project becomes I'm working on a project. These small edits change how you land. You stop presenting yourself like a suggestion and start sounding like a fact. The room takes its cue from that. Your laugh is part of your voice too. Many people use it as a reflex apology, laughing at jokes they don't find funny, laughing after everything they say, laughing to fill silence. That makes them blend into the general nervous buzz. You let your laugh be real and rare. When something genuinely amuses you, you laugh fully for a moment, then return to calm. When something doesn't, you don't fake a big reaction. Maybe a small smile, a breath through the nose, or even just a neutral, You're not cold, you're honest. People feel the difference between someone who laughs with them and someone who laughs to keep them. They remember the first kind. Being memorable doesn't mean hijacking every conversation. It means dropping lines that stick. That happens when you speak from observation instead of repetition. Instead of, yeah, this event is cool, you might say, it's funny how everyone stands near the bar even though the music is louder here. Tiny, accurate observations make your presence feel awake. You're not trying to be profound. You're just naming things people feel but haven't said. Those are the sentences people quote later. There was this person who said, Machiavelli also wrote about effort and difficulty. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. If you want a voice that marks you in crowds, you have to be willing to practice it. You can't expect to sound composed under pressure if you only speak with intention when you feel safe. You test it in small ways, answering questions without rushing, saying no to invitations you don't want, holding silence for a second before you respond to something provocative. Every time you do, your nervous system learns that calm speech won't kill you. You become careful with what you don't say. You don't overshare your entire life story with strangers to try and fast-forward intimacy. You don't join every complaint spiral about the event, the host, the food. You don't badmouth people who aren't there. That restraint makes your words feel more valuable. When you do open up or when you do criticize something, people lean in because they know you're not constantly dumping raw emotion on whoever's nearest. You also learn to end conversations cleanly. Forgettable people leak out of interactions. They let chats die in awkward silences, or they get stuck long after the energy is gone. You do something different. When a conversation reaches a natural lull, you don't panic. You smile, say something like, "It was good talking to you. I'm gonna grab another drink," and you move. Your body and your words agree. This interaction was complete. That kind of ending leaves a better taste than endless dragging. People remember comfort, and a clean exit is comfortable. You let your voice match your posture and gaze. If your body says calm, composed, deliberate, but your words are frantic and scattered, the room feels the mismatch. If your eyes say, "I belong here," but your sentences are loaded with self-deprecation and apology, you undercut your own presence. You aim for alignment, steady stance, measured gaze, clear voice, lean words. That combination makes you feel like one coherent signal instead of static. The law is simple. In a crowd, your voice is not there to fill silence. It's there to leave echoes. A few clear sentences, spoken in a grounded tone, will last longer in people's memory than an hour of nervous chatter. You don't need to perform. You need to sound like you meant to be heard. Once your posture, gaze, and voice agree on that, rooms stop forgetting you, even when you speak less than everyone else. Crowds don't remember everything. They remember a few sharp images, a few lines, a few feelings. The difference between the person who becomes that one guy, that one girl, and the person who dissolves into I don't know, just someone, lives in small behaviors. Not the big speech, not the loud laugh, not the outfit you spend an hour choosing, but the tiny, repeatable moves that turn you from background presence into a story people retell later. Most people think memorability is about one big moment, a crazy joke, a bold interruption, an outrageous stunt. That kind of attention burns fast and dies faster. What actually sticks is consistency. The crowd's memory works like a lazy editor. It keeps whatever lines up into a clear character and deletes everything that doesn't. Your job is not to impress everyone in one shot. Your job is to behave in 100 small ways, like the same person your posture, gaze, and voice already promised you are. Machiavelli understood how memory works in politics and power. He wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does at last." The fool waits until the end of the night to realize he should have stood straighter, spoken clearer, moved earlier, left cleaner. The wise person does those things from the beginning. In crowds, wisdom is doing small, intelligent things early and consistently so that you don't have to fight for attention later. One of those small behaviors is how you handle introductions. Forgettable people say their name and then stare, forcing the other person to do all the work. You do something simpler and more deliberate. Name, anchor, line. You say your name clearly. You give them one anchor, where you are from, what you work on, or how you connect to this event. Then you add a short, clean line that hints at your word from part one. Composed, sharp, mysterious, whatever you chose. Not a whole bio. Just enough for their brain to file you somewhere specific. I'm X. I work on Y, mostly to make Z less painful for people. Nice to meet you. That's already more memorable than I'm X. Yeah. Another behavior is how you join and leave small groups. Most people creep in without a sound or barge in mid-story, then drift away without closure. You step in and out like someone who respects social space. When you join, you catch the thread first, eyes on the speaker, listening for a few seconds. Then you add something that fits the current topic instead of steering everything back to yourself. When you leave, you don't ghost. You say, "Good talking with you," or "I'm gonna say hi to a friend. I'll catch you later," with your body already slightly turned toward your next move. It's a tiny ritual, but people remember who made interactions feel finished instead of awkward. You also control how you react to status. Crowds are full of invisible hierarchies. Popular people, powerful people, beautiful people. Most bodies betray themselves around status. They straighten too much, laugh too loud, spill admiration everywhere. You practice a different reflex. When someone high status enters the circle, your posture stays the same. You don't step backward to give them your spot, and you don't lunge forward to orbit them. You greet them with the same calm eye contact and voice you use with everyone else. That equality of treatment is rare. It creates a subtle tension in people's minds. Who is this? Who talks like that even to them? Small courtesies become sharp edges in your favor. In noisy rooms, basic respect is scarce. People cut each other off, forget names, ignore introductions. You do the opposite without making a show of it. You remember names by repeating them once, "Nice to meet you, Sarah," and then using them later. You notice when someone hasn't been included in the conversation and open a lane. You were about to say something? You step half aside when a server passes instead of making them fight their way through. These actions are tiny, but they form a pattern. You look like someone who is awake while everyone else is half asleep. People don't forget that feeling. Follow through after micro-promises is another thing that turns you into a story. Most people in crowds say, "We should grab coffee. Send me that link. I'll check out your work," and then do nothing. Their words evaporate with the music. You keep your promises brutally small and brutally real. If you say, "Send me your profile, I'll follow you," you follow when they send it. If you say, "I'll send you that book title," you send it that night or the next day. You are not trying to become best friends with everyone. You're showing that your mouth and your actions live in the same place. That alone separates you from most of the room. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." People remember where they lost value, where they gained it, and where they felt it was respected. In a crowd context, patrimony isn't just money. It's dignity, time, attention. If people feel poorer after dealing with you, drained, ignored, used, they forget you quickly or remember you bitterly. If people feel slightly richer after crossing your path, more seen, more focused, more real, they remember you as a point where their night improved. That's what you aim for with every small behavior. Leave people with more than they had when the conversation started, without draining yourself. How you handle small disrespect is another memorable detail. Not big humiliations, subtle slights. Being talked over, someone making a joke at your expense, someone cutting the line in front of you. Most people either swallow it entirely or explode. You take a third path, calm correction. If someone interrupts you repeatedly, you finish your sentence the next time, even if you have to gently say, "1 second, I'll finish that thought." Then you let them talk. If someone makes a joke at your expense, you give a short, neutral line, "I'm not running that bit," or "try another one," and then you move on. You're not punishing them. You're making it clear you won't volunteer as a prop. That balance, no meltdown, no submission, sticks. You also learn to manage your rest moments in the room. Everyone needs a break. Most people take it by vanishing into their phone, retreating to the bathroom for long stretches, or hiding in a corner. You rest strategically. You step to the side, maybe against a wall or near a bar, hold your same calm posture, check your phone briefly, then lift your eyes and rejoin the room. You don't disappear, you dim. Someone watching you from across the space sees a consistent presence, not a person who keeps collapsing into hiding. That continuity makes your outline stronger in their memory. Tiny rituals around leaving make a big difference. At the end of the night, or when you decide you're done, you don't sneak out like a ghost. You also don't do a grand farewell tour for attention. You pick a few people you actually connected with and say a specific goodbye. "Good talking about X," or "I liked what you said about Y." Enjoy the rest of your night. Short, direct, attached to something real. Then you leave on your timing. The last image they have of you is someone finishing strong and clean, not someone lingering until they're clearly lost. Even your online follow-up, if you choose to do it, follows the same logic. Simple, specific, no begging. Good to meet you at place. Enjoyed our chat about topic. No essays, no instant oversharing. You let the in-person impression carry most of the weight. The DM is just the receipt that you're consistent. People remember when someone they met in a blur of faces later shows up exactly how they sounded and stood in person. None of these behaviors are flashy. That's why they're powerful. Crowds are full of people chasing loud moments. You're stacking quiet ones, a clear introduction, a stable stance. An honest laugh, a kept promise, a calm correction, a clean exit. Each tiny move is forgettable by itself. Together, they form the image of someone who knows what they're doing even when everyone else is improvising. That image is what survives in people's minds. The law is simple. Becoming unforgettable in a crowd is not about one dramatic scene. It's about a sequence of small, deliberate acts that all point to the same person. The entrance that doesn't rush, the gaze that doesn't beg, the posture that doesn't fold, the voice that doesn't perform, the tiny courtesies that cost you nothing but give others something real. You do these things on purpose, again and again, until the room has no choice but to remember you. Not because you scream for attention, but because you moved through it like someone who didn't need to.